Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the big three matchups of this upcoming weekend. Texas Tech, Utah. I'm going to take the home team Utah there. Auburn, Oklahoma. Again, going to take the home team Oklahoma. And then Indiana, I think, is going to win at home over Illinois. I'm leaning a little bit towards the home teams around this time of year. And we got four more for you right here. We got Michigan-Nebraska. We got Tulane, Ole Miss, Florida, Miami, as well as South Carolina and Missouri coming up this weekend, all of which are games that could have CFP implications. And we'll start with a huge one in the Big Ten. It is a game that absolutely could have the same implications we just talked about with Illinois, Indiana. Both these teams could firmly be looking the CFP in the face if they were able to win tomorrow or on Saturday. Michigan on the road at Nebraska. Michigan favored by 2.5 points, over under at 45.5. This one's going to be incredible. Dylan Raiola gets a huge chance. Nebraska gets a huge chance to show people this is a little bit different of a year. Show people that they can make a run at the CFP. For Michigan, you want to get back on track. You played a great game last week against Central Michigan. Obviously, losing that one to Oklahoma was very tough, but this would be a great bounce-back win and would still put you in a great position moving forward. Some tough games after this, no doubt about it, but they would be in a position to possibly make an interesting run at something pretty special in the Big Ten this year. But the matchup to watch to me is Dylan Raiola against Wink Martindale. We know Wink Martindale is an NFL guy. He's going to bring some different concepts that Dylan Raiola hasn't confidently seen before, but at the end of the day, this is a very good quarterback. This is a guy that if you give him time and give him time to see the field, he's going to go through his reads very professionally. He's going to get the ball out efficiently, and he's going to put it on target 9 times out of 10. He's a very, very confident football player, and I think he's going to be a guy that really rises to the challenge, not only in this game, but going forward the rest of the season. But that being said, Wink Martindale can always bring something a little bit different to the table, and if that offensive line or those receivers can't hold up the way that they need to, maybe things crumble just a little bit for this Nebraska offense. Some keys to the game. Michigan's quarterback run game is a must in this football game. I think you saw it last week with Bryce Underwood. That's a special athlete. Went for over 100 rushing yards in the game against Central Michigan. Was not used against Oklahoma, which bears the question. How much do you want to use him in these big games where he's going to get hit pretty good whenever he leaves the pocket? Nebraska is going to know that that's a very talented quarterback, not necessarily wanting to injure him by any respect, but wanting to let him know you're there. There's no doubt about that. That is going to happen at some point in this football game. Doesn't change that you're probably going to have to use his legs at some point, going to have to use the entire playbook to really open this thing up. I tend to believe they will. How much is probably the big time question here. The Nebraska pass protection. They've gone through a lot of different iterations of this offensive line, particularly at right tackle more than anything else. Gunnar Gotola, Turner Corcoran, Elijah Pritchett that came over from Alabama was probably expected to be the outright starter. Kind of been a little bit all over the place. It sounds like it's going to be Gunnar Gotola's spot going forward, but Jayshon Barham, Cole Sullivan, some very, very talented guys on the other side of the ball that you're going to have to deal with every single snap. If they can't hold up, I could see things falling apart relatively quickly for this Nebraska offense. They got to be able to hold up at least enough to give Dylan Raiola time to go about his business. He's going to do it efficiently and well. You just got to give him a moment to really be able to see the field, especially early in this football game. And then this is Nebraska's moment in a number of different ways. This is the moment where you hire Matt Rule. You're into year 3 at this point. You have a lot of things rolling in the right direction. You got to get this one. You've fallen short in these big-time games in the past, and really a lot of games in the past, to be totally fair, but you have a moment here to beat a Michigan team that everyone's going to be watching, a ranked team at home. It is going to be a huge moment for this football program. Can they get it done is the big-time question. I think they will. I'm going to pick Nebraska to win this football game 21-17. I think Dylan Raiola has the ability to go about his business very effectively in this game against a good Michigan defense, and I think Bryce Underwood's a good football player. I still think this might be a little bit too much for him early in his career. I don't know if they're going to use the quarterback run game the way that I tend to believe they should. So I'm going to go with Nebraska in this game. I think they do enough. I don't know how pretty it is, but I think there's a lot of excitement about Matt Rule moving forward. Tulane on the road at number 13, Ole Miss. Ole Miss favored by 11.5 in this game. Over-under set at 61.5. This one's really fun, and it's a Tulane team that comes in, not necessarily the number one team in the CFP when you talk about group of 6, but definitely number 2 if they're not number 1. I think South Florida kind of took that number 1 spot for a little bit, but this Tulane team wins on the road at Ole Miss. They take it right back. I can absolutely promise you that, and set up a very interesting American season throughout the entire year, because that's a very fun conference with a lot of really interesting teams, one of which we'll talk about later in the show. But this is a really, really fun game. Jake Retzlaff comes in and makes all types of plays with his legs. Totally changes the dynamic of that Tulane offense, and it's been really, really fun to watch. Ole Miss going through an interesting quarterback situation that we'll talk about here in a second. It sounds like it's going to be Trinidad Chambliss. Does that help out Tulane just a little bit? But the matchup to watch is going to be the Tulane run game against the Ole Miss front seven. Tulane wants to run the football. They run it about 58% of the time, about 40 times per game. So they are going to keep the ball on the ground one way or the other with Jake Retzlaff, with a lot of the running backs that they have at their disposal. Ole Miss has a front seven that they have not seen. It is an absolute nightmare to deal with. They have athleticism that they have not seen this year, even with the Duke team, especially with the Northwestern team, with all due respect. This is a nightmare of a group up front. It is going to be really, really tough. Jake Retzlaff is going to have to find a way to get his run game going. Have to find a way, if it's just him, to get out of the pocket and make some plays with his legs, because this group will get after you, and if you're not prepared for it, they're going to take you down very quickly, and you're not going to have a shot in this football game. The keys to the game, I'm looking at this more of a perspective of how can Tulane win this game, because I think we all understand Ole Miss is the comfortable favorite in this football game and probably should win. But the Ole Miss quarterback situation, it's an opening. There's no doubt about that. Arkansas had very little idea that it was going to be Trinidad Chambliss in that football game. Tulane at least knows. And when you have John Summerall, you have a shot to put together a very good defensive performance regardless of who you're playing. This is an opening. There's no doubt about that. Trinidad Chambliss played really good football last week. If you can shut down his leg, you might have a little bit of an opening in this football game. And that's going to be a lot easier said than done. So we'll see how that kind of develops. We'll see if Tulane can kind of rise to that challenge. I don't think it's going to be Austin Simmons. There's a world where he gets healthy, but I think it's going to be Trinidad Chambliss, and at the very least, Tulane knows that going in. Tulane's run defense is the other part of this. We talked about Trinidad Chambliss' legs. You're going to have to make plays with that. But Kewan Lacey, if you can slow him down, this Ole Miss offense will slow down at the very least. I don't think though it'll grind to an absolute stop, but we saw it against Kentucky. Kewan Lacey was able to get going later in that football game, but early on it was a little bit tough sledding, and the offense kind of went by the wayside. Austin Simmons missed some big-time throws. There was a couple of turnovers, and you're looking at that game, and Kentucky's firmly in the mix late in that football game. So I think you're in a position where if Tulane can stop the run, if they can keep Kewan Lacey, particularly early in this football game, away from getting those 7, 8, 10-yard runs that really put a damage to you, I think they have an opening here. And then play clean football. If Tulane cannot turn the ball over, they're in really good shape because they force a lot of turnovers. They force 2.7 turnovers per game through 3 games this season. They're 7th in the country when you talk about turnover margin. They're playing really good football. And I think it's a position where you have a quarterback in Trinidad Chambliss that has a lot of confidence, but we haven't really seen thrown all the way into the fire yet. We'll see what happens in this football game. Obviously, the Arkansas game was plenty tough. I think he's going to play good football in this game, but maybe Tulane can make things a little bit more nerve-wracking for him. Maybe he starts down just a little bit more aggressively than the Arkansas game. But at the end of the day, I'm going to pick Ole Miss. I tried to do my best to talk myself into Tulane in this spot. I think going on the road against a much more physically and athletically imposing team is going to be a lot. I'll take Ole Miss to win this one 30-20, but I think it's going to be a fun football game. I think Jake Retzlaff is going to do enough with his legs to make this thing interesting, but I'll take Ole Miss to win this one relatively comfortably at the end of the day. Florida goes on the road to Miami this week, and I don't know what to make of it. Miami's favored by a touchdown and a half, or 7.5 points, excuse me. Over-under at 51.5. This one's going to be a night game down there in Miami, which has become a little bit of an atmosphere over the last little bit. So this is going to be a really fun football game. I think you have a Florida team that is limping in. I don't think there's any other way to put it. They're coming in with a coach that very well could not be their coach on Monday if things go poorly in this football game. There's a lot on the table in this game. Miami has a chance to really kind of continue to assert themselves as one of the top teams in the country, continue to assert themselves as the very best team in the ACC right now. It's going to be a little bit tougher of a battle than I think some people expect, but at the end of the day, you're walking into a moment where you can really just kind of put a beating on Florida and really put them away for just about the entirety of the season. I think Miami wants to do that. But the matchup to watch in this game, the Florida D-line against the Miami O-line, Caleb Banks isn't playing, and that really hurts what this Florida defensive line is going to be able to do. That being said, they still have very talented guys, very physical guys up front that can make big-time plays. The issue is the Miami offensive line is downright terrifying. They are a beast of a group, and they have two guys on both sides of that offensive line, Inez Cooper as well as Francis Mauanoa, that are going to be first-round picks. They're absolute nightmares to deal with. They are such good players. Markel Bell on the other side of the offensive line is a freak of nature as well. It's going to be really hard for Florida to get the push that they want to get in this game. Florida's given up 115 yards per game on the ground. I think it might be a little bit more aggressive in this football game, but some keys to watch. Jaden Baugh, as simple as that. He is the best football player that is going to be on the field in a Florida uniform this weekend because Caleb Banks is out in some respects. But at the end of the day, this is a uniquely talented football player. Give him the ball. I get it. Miami's run defense is very good. They're one of the best in the country. That is going to be a fight you're going to have to win. The reality of the matter is your quarterback's not your quarterback right now. DJ Lagway is not playing his level of football the way that he is capable of playing it. You got to take the ball out of his hands. You got to give him a run game that can really help him out. Jaden Baugh can make plays for you, even against a front that is going to be nasty, that is going to make big-time plays with Ruben Bain, with all those Akeem Mesidor and all those guys up front that they have. At the end of the day, it's a whole lot better than a quarterback that had 5 picks last week going up against Ruben Bain and a nightmare of a pass rush for Miami. Hand the ball off early and often in this football game. If you want to stay in realm of winning this game, you're going to need plays from DJ Lagway. I promise you that down the stretch of this football game, but early in it, especially early in it, get the ball to Jaden Baugh and let him do what he does. He's going to get you positive yards, and he's going to give you a shot. The other part of this, the QB mistake gap. There's going to be a gap in this game. I have to feel that going into it. DJ Lagway has played really poor football, including 5 INTs last week to LSU. Carson Beck has thrown 2 all year, both coming last week, but had not thrown any, and I believe the 6 games before that, going back to his time at Georgia. He's a very good football player. If you give him time to process the field, he is going to tear you apart. There's really no other way that's going to go. So you're in a position where, can DJ Lagway avoid mistakes enough? I think he's going to make mistakes in this football game. I think the defense on the other side is too good. Can he avoid them enough? Can you force Carson Beck into enough where at least you're not playing at a massive deficit? At least you're not putting yourself in a position where you're down 10 points to an LSU team, but you have a quarterback with 5 picks, and that's the reason you're down by this much. That's the reason you're even down in the first place. You have the ability to shorten the gap in this football game if you can avoid mistakes from DJ Lagway. It's not all the way in Billy Napier's control, but it's enough in Billy Napier's control to make this happen. And then that's the big key. The Napier question is a very real thing. Every Florida player understands what's happening behind the scenes. Billy Napier understands what's happening. If he doesn't win this football game, if he at least doesn't keep it close in this football game, he's probably looking for a new job here pretty soon. And you hate to talk about it, it's the reality of the situation. The players understand that. Billy Napier understands that. How do they handle the pressure? On the road, at a very tough environment against one of the very best teams in the country, can they rise to the occasion? Can they play better football than they've played through 3 weeks? I tend to think no. I think the reality of this football game is you're going to see Miami score 1 or 2 touchdowns early in this game, and you're just not going to see Florida respond all that well. I think it's a good football team filled with talented players that have the ability to turn a corner, maybe in this game or maybe throughout the year. I just think they're in a really bad spot. I talked about it last week. I thought they were holding on by a thread going into LSU, and they were walking into a buzzsaw at night against in Baton Rouge. I think the exact same things happen in this football game. I think they're in a really bad spot, and I think they're walking into a football team that is just going to execute at way too high of a level. I'll take Miami to win it 34-17. I think Billy Napier is fired on Sunday. I hate to say it. I think it's the reality of that situation, and we'll see how it develops from there for Florida. South Carolina on the road at number 23, Missouri. Missouri favored by 10.5 in this football game. We'll talk about why here in a second, but over-under at 47.5, 7 p.m. kick. It is going to be a really fun one. Missouri kind of needs it in some respects. You look forward at the rest of their schedule, very manageable. They have Alabama on the road. They have Oklahoma later in the year. They have some tough games, no doubt about it. You win this one, you're probably not going to lose more than 2 games. Now, obviously, you very well could. You could play some different football the rest of the way, but they're playing really high-level football, particularly on offense, and I think they can really do some special stuff. Lenore Sellers, that's the big time question going into this game. It doesn't sound like he's going to play. Shane Beamer was very cagey about that, said we have a policy that if you don't practice Tuesday and Wednesday, you're probably not going to play in the football game. I don't know if that meant Lenoris didn't practice yesterday and didn't practice today. We'll find out. We'll see how that develops throughout this week. I tend to believe he's going to play. I also tend to believe he's not going to be 100%, and we'll talk about that a little in a second here. But the matchup to watch to me is the Missouri offensive line against the South Carolina pass rush. The real only, or I don't want to say the only way, but one way it goes wrong for Missouri in this football game is Bo Pribla meets Dylan Stewart and Brian Thomas Jr. just a little bit too early in this football game, and all the confidence he had, all the stuff he had rolling into this football game just starts to kind of slowly break down. Now, I think South Carolina has a little bit of work to do defensively as well, but at the end of the day, if those two guys can have the impact that they're capable of having against an offensive line that's played really good football thus far, but does have some new guys, does have some new faces that they're still kind of working into up to speed, I should say. But at the end of the day, this could crumble a little bit for Missouri. It also could be something where the offensive line plays really well. Bo Pribla puts on a show, and he's the #1 Heisman contender on Sunday morning. So it's going to be a really fun matchup. I think the way that South Carolina has to win this football game is the defense playing really good football, Missouri's offense feeling a little bit unconfident going into the second half, and then hopefully getting one big-time play from your offense. But the keys to the game, we just talked about it. Lenore Sellers' health is a massive piece. I think he's going to play. I don't think he'll be 100%, and that's the big-time question here is how good is the South Carolina offense with an 80% Lenore Sellers, with a 70% Lenore Sellers, because I think we understand that that's one of the very most important players in the entire country, regardless of team, regardless of position, because he creates a lot for that offense. Now, hasn't played his best football through a couple of weeks of this season, but at the end of the day, they're a whole lot better of a football team with him on the field than with him off of it, so he's going to have to be in that football game. How close to 100% he is might just decide what the South Carolina offense can do on Saturday. And then Missouri, if they can get the run game going outside, they're going to do a lot of really, really special things. Dylan Stewart, one of the most special pass rushers in the entire country. Maybe the run defense leaves a little bit to be desired, and that's an opening where Ahmad Hardy and Jamal Roberts can really get going on those outside zone, wide zone type reads and just tear off for 60 yards. That's what they did against Kansas. That's what they've done against just about every team they've played thus far, and this is an opening for them to really put that on tape and kind of show everyone they're a very real football team that not only needs to beat you with flash, but has two running backs that will absolutely bury you any chance they get. And then explosive plays on both sides of the football, but mainly for South Carolina because they're going to need quite a few of them. Their offense has not been a consistent group through 3 weeks of the season. They've only been able to hit massive plays or go 3 and out, really, for the vast majority of it. And you're going to have to find a way to get those guys going early in this football game because if you can't, you're going to have a really, really tough time getting this win. I'm going to take Missouri to win this one. I think they win this one 31-21. I think they have enough offensively. I think they get the run game going with those two incredible running backs. I think Bo Pribla hurts them with his legs just a little bit. And South Carolina looks up at the end of this game, and they're 2-2 with a lot of big-time questions, probably including Lenore Sellers' health moving forward. So it's going to be a really fun game. I think it has a ton to do with what the SEC is going to look like going forward. If Missouri wins it, they very well could be a playoff team. If South Carolina wins it, then maybe they're back in the mix and Lenore Sellers can make some big-time plays. But we'll talk about all of those on Friday. We'll get into a little bit more details as we get into the end of it. But let's get into the final games I want to talk about this week. We have Arkansas at Memphis, SMU, TCU, Oregon State, Oregon, and a number of others right after this, so stick with us.